Have you ever had that disturbing feeling that you are being silenced even before you open your mouth? That your ideas, no matter how well grounded they are dismissed not for their content, but simply because they challenge what everyone around you accepts as absolute truth. This is not paranoia. It is a reality that intensifies every day in our hyper-connected society, where divergent thinking is not only discouraged, but actively suppressed by increasingly sophisticated mechanisms of social control. What we are experiencing today is a subtle yet devastatingly effective form of censorship that doesn't need laws or government decrees to function. It operates through something much more powerful and insidious: algorithmic social pressure, digital conformity, and the collective fear of being labeled as different. This reality that you feel in your skin every day has deep roots in human history, but it has never been so refined in its methods. For millennia, human societies have developed mechanisms to maintain social cohesion and ensure that individuals do not destabilize the group with dangerous ideas. In primitive tribes, those who questioned ancestral traditions could be banished or eliminated. In ancient Greece, Socrates was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth with his uncomfortable questions. During the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church created an elaborate system to identify and suppress heresies, burning not only books, but also the people who dared to think outside established dogmas. In the 20th century, totalitarian regimes perfected mind control techniques that led victims to police themselves, internalizing censorship so deeply that they didn't even realize they were being controlled. But what we are living through today represents a qualitative evolution of these historical methods of control. We no longer need bonfires or concentration camps. We don't even need explicit censorship laws. What we have now is something far more elegant and efficient, a system that makes us censor ourselves voluntarily, believing that we are exercising our freedom of choice. It is a mechanism so well designed that its victims often defend the very system that oppresses them, fiercely attacking anyone who tries to expose its existence. The central element of this new form of control is what we can call digital manufactured consensus. Unlike traditional propaganda systems, which relied on centralized institutions like newspapers, radio, and television, the current system of opinion shaping operates through decentralized networks that appear democratic and participatory. On social media, you get the feeling that you're part of a great public debate, freely expressing your opinions and interacting with a diversity of perspectives. But this feeling is a carefully constructed illusion. The algorithms that govern these platforms are not neutral. They are programmed to maximize engagement, and they have discovered that the best way to do this is to create echo chambers that reinforce users' pre-existing beliefs, while simultaneously demonizing and marginalizing dissenting voices. When you express an opinion that goes against the dominant current, the algorithm not only reduces the reach of your message, but also directs people to it who will aggressively attack it. The result is that you quickly learn it's better to stay quiet, that it's safer to keep your doubts and questions to yourself. This process of self-censorship is reinforced by a phenomenon that social psychologists know as the spiral of silence. When we perceive that our opinions are in the minority or unpopular, we naturally tend to avoid expressing them publicly. But in the digital environment, this natural tendency is artificially amplified. Algorithms make dissenting opinions seem much more isolated than they really are, creating a false sense that you are the only one who thinks differently. At the same time, they amplify voices aligned with dominant narratives, making them seem more numerous and representative than they are in reality. The result is a massive distortion of public perception about what people actually think. Surveys consistently show that there is far more diversity of opinion among the population than what is publicly expressed on social media or in the mainstream media. Millions of people have doubts, questions, and alternative perspectives, but they have been trained to believe they are alone in their thoughts. This sense of intellectual isolation is no accident. It is the result of a system designed to create conformity through fear and social shame. The sophistication of this system goes far beyond what most people imagine. It does not operate solely through direct censorship or algorithmic manipulation. It creates a cultural environment where certain ideas become literally unthinkable. Through subtle conditioning techniques, words and concepts are loaded with such intense emotional connotations that people develop visceral aversions to certain lines of thought before even examining them rationally. This process begins in schools, is reinforced in universities, and culminates in the professional environment where expressing certain opinions can mean the end of a career. I want to pause for a moment to ask you directly, in which situations have you felt the need to hide or disguise your true opinions out of fear of the consequences? Those moments when you knew you had something important to say but chose silence because you realized your perspective would not be welcomed? I know we often keep these experiences to ourselves, perhaps out of fear of admitting that we bowed to social pressure, or because we've normalized this self-censorship as simply diplomacy or common sense. But your experience of being silenced is not isolated, and acknowledging this is the first step toward reclaiming your intellectual autonomy. If this recognition resonates with you, share in the comments, "I silenced myself when." Your honesty may validate the experience of countless others who have gone through similar situations and help break the illusion that we are alone in this fight for intellectual authenticity. The mechanism behind this widespread self-censorship operates through what we might call reputational terrorism. In a society where our professional and social identity increasingly depends on our digital presence, the prospect of being publicly labeled as a bearer of problematic ideas becomes an existential threat. We're not just talking about losing followers on social media. We're talking about losing jobs, opportunities, relationships, and even access to basic services. This system of social control is far more efficient than any form of governmental censorship because it turns every individual into their own censor. The genius of this system lies in how it presents itself as liberating and progressive. It doesn't openly say that certain ideas are forbidden. Instead, it associates those ideas with morally repugnant traits: intolerance, ignorance, malevolence. Who would be crazy enough to want to be seen as intolerant or ignorant? Thus, censorship operates not through explicit prohibition, but through the manipulation of social identity. You are not forbidden from thinking certain things. You are simply conditioned to believe that good and intelligent people don't think those things. This conditioning is particularly effective because it exploits our fundamental need for social belonging. As highly social primates, our survival has always depended on our ability to integrate and be accepted by the group. Being excluded or rejected by the group activates the same neural circuits that process physical pain. Our brain literally interprets social ostracism as a life threat. The architects of modern control understand this vulnerability and exploit it ruthlessly. They know that most people would rather give up their intellectual authenticity than face the risk of social rejection. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this new form of control is how it infiltrates our own minds. It's not just about making us shut up publicly. The ultimate goal is to make us stop thinking forbidden thoughts altogether. Through a process that psychologists call internalization, we begin to police our own thoughts, developing a kind of digital superego that punishes us internally whenever our mind ventures into unauthorized territories. We have reached the point where we don't even need external censors because we have become our own oppressors. This internalization of censorship represents a complete victory of the control system because it eliminates even the possibility of resistance. When people stop thinking subversive thoughts, they stop seeking information that might contradict dominant narratives. They stop asking uncomfortable questions. They stop connecting dots that could lead to problematic conclusions. The result is a form of cultural lobotomy where entire societies lose the capacity for independent critical thinking. The role of technology in this process cannot be underestimated. Digital platforms are not just neutral vehicles for the expression of ideas. They are architectures of psychological control designed to shape behavior and thought. Every aspect of their interface, from recommendation algorithms to like and share systems, is carefully calibrated to encourage conformity and discourage dissent. These systems are constantly tested and refined using behavioral psychology and cognitive neuroscience techniques to maximize their effectiveness. But technology is merely a tool. Behind it are very specific human interests that benefit from maintaining the status quo. Giant corporations that profit from the predictability of consumer behavior, political institutions that rely on civic passivity to maintain their power, cultural elites who have built their identity and social status around certain ideological orthodoxies. These groups do not necessarily conspire in a coordinated way, but their interests converge in the creation and maintenance of an environment where independent thought is discouraged and conformity is rewarded. The irony is that Many of the people who most fervently defend this system genuinely believe they are fighting against oppression and promoting freedom. They have been conditioned to see any questioning of the system as a form of reactionism or extremism. This is the mark of a truly sophisticated control system. It convinces its victims that they are in fact its beneficiaries and that any criticism of the system is a threat to their well-being. Recognizing this system does not mean embracing conspiracy theories or paranoia. It simply means accepting that the same impulses that have always led human groups to suppress dissent continue to operate today, only with more sophisticated tools. It means understanding that the authoritarian tendency is not a historical aberration, but a constant of human nature that manifests in different ways in different eras. Our time is no exception. It has only developed more elegant and effective methods of social control. The question we need to ask is not whether this control system exists, but what we can do to preserve our intellectual autonomy within it. The first answer is to develop awareness. You cannot resist something you cannot see. Once you understand how social pressure mechanisms operate, you can begin to make more deliberate choices about when to yield to them and when to resist. You can start to distinguish between your own genuine opinions and those implanted in you through social manipulation. The second answer is to actively seek intellectual diversity. This means intentionally stepping outside your echo chambers, looking for sources of information that challenge your beliefs, and exposing yourself to perspectives that make you uncomfortable. It means recognizing that intellectual discomfort is not something to avoid, but something to cultivate as a sign of growth. It means developing the courage to change your mind when presented with convincing evidence, even if it means admitting you were wrong about something important. The third answer is to cultivate relationships with people who value intellectual honesty above social conformity. This may mean seeking out smaller, more intimate communities where it's possible to have genuine conversations about controversial topics without fear of public retaliation. It may mean distancing yourself from environments where ideological performance is more valued than the sincere pursuit of truth. It may mean accepting that you will have fewer friends on social media, but more authentic relationships in real life. The fourth answer, perhaps the most important, is to develop a personal identity that does not depend entirely on external approval. This requires deep work in self-knowledge and developing trust in your own judgment. It means learning to tolerate the anxiety that comes with uncertainty and ambiguity, rather than always seeking the comfort of easy certainties provided by external authorities. It means developing an internal moral compass that can guide you even when all the voices around you are telling you you're going the wrong way. This process of developing intellectual autonomy is not just a matter of personal freedom, it is a civilizational necessity. Societies that lose the ability for self-criticism and genuine debate inevitably become fragile and dysfunctional. They lose the ability to adapt, to change, to correct errors, to innovate and grow. They become vulnerable to crises that could have been avoided if more people had been willing to ask hard questions and challenge established consensus. History is full of examples of societies that collapsed precisely because they developed highly effective mechanisms for suppressing dissent. The Soviet Union is an obvious example, but there are many others. Entire civilizations have vanished because they lost the ability to question their own fundamental premises. What we are experiencing today may look different in its methods, but it follows the same basic logic. The creation of an environment where certain ideas become literally unthinkable, where certain questions cannot be asked, where certain possibilities cannot be considered. The challenge we face is how to maintain our essential humanity in a world that increasingly rewards robotic behavior. How to preserve our capacity for independent thought when we are constantly bombarded with messages telling us what we should think. How to maintain our intellectual courage when the price of honesty can be so high. How to balance our need for social belonging with our responsibility to seek truth, even when that truth is inconvenient or unpopular. These are not abstract or academic questions. They define the quality of our human experience and the kind of society we are creating for future generations. Every time you choose to express an honest opinion instead of saying what is socially expected, you are making a small contribution to the preservation of intellectual freedom. Every time you ask a genuine question instead of accepting a ready-made answer, you are exercising mental muscles that our society is systematically trying to atrophy. Resistance to this control system does not require grand acts of heroism. It begins with small acts of intellectual authenticity. Reading a book that challenges your beliefs, asking a question that might be misunderstood, admitting you don't know something everyone assumes you should, refusing to repeat a slogan that sounds nice but that you don't truly understand. These small acts of resistance may seem insignificant, but they are the building blocks of a free mind. The future of human freedom may very well depend on our collective ability to preserve spaces for genuine thought, sincere doubt, and honest intellectual exploration. This requires not just individual courage, but also the creation of institutions and communities that protect and nurture intellectual diversity. It requires the development of a culture that values the pursuit of truth over the maintenance of comforting narratives. If these reflections have touched on something you've been feeling, but perhaps haven't found the words to express, know that you are not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you will connect with a growing community of people who share your unease and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the great questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways of living amid the transformations we are witnessing. This is not just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth where genuine thought is welcome and necessary. Join us in this ongoing journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with greater wisdom and authenticity in a world that often pressures us to conform and silence ourselves. If you appreciated this reflection and believe it may help others recognize their own experience of being silenced, leave a like so more people can find this content. Your simple action might be what allows someone who feels alone in their doubts to discover that they are not as isolated as they thought. The final choice remains yours. You can continue allowing others to define the limits of what you are permitted to think, or you can begin to reclaim your intellectual autonomy. You can keep living in fear of expressing your doubts and genuine questions, or you can accept that an authentic life necessarily involves discomfort and uncertainty. The price of conformity may seem low in the short term, but in the long run, it is devastating. You gradually lose contact with yourself, with your own perceptions, with your own ability to navigate the world using your own intelligence. You become a stranger to yourself, living a life designed by others, pursuing goals you didn't choose, defending ideas you never critically examined. This is the true tragedy of modern mind control. It not only robs us of our freedom, it robs us of our very humanity. But this loss is not irreversible. At any moment, you can decide to stop, question, think for yourself. At any moment, you can choose courage over comfort, authenticity over approval, truth over social safety. This choice is always available, but only you can make it.
Hello, everybody. And what I want to talk to you today about is the power to shape the world and the power to shape our future. About your power as leaders and as innovators, but also about the power of the human species as a whole. And the big question we are facing is whether AI is taking away humanity's power to control our future, or perhaps AI is giving humanity more power than ever before. And also, can we even speak about humanity, about a single humanity anymore? Or perhaps humanity in the era of AI is splitting into different groups, each with a radically different future. But before we get to AI, we have to say a few words about politics. The relatively stable liberal order of the early 21st century is collapsing. Instead of a cooperative order based on universal values, global institutions, and international laws, we are entering into a super competitive, chaotic world in which only one thing matters, and this one thing is brute force. Leaders like President Trump envision the world as a collection of fortresses, with each country separated from the others by high walls. Financial walls like tariffs, military walls, cultural walls, and physical walls. This vision may have certain advantages, but it fails to address one key problem. Walled fortresses are seldom friendly. Thousands of years of history teach us that each national fortress would probably want a bit more security, prosperity, and territory for itself at the expense of the neighbors. And in the absence of universal values, global institutions, and international laws, how would rival fortresses resolve their disputes? For millennia, the vision of the world as a collection of fortresses always led to exactly the same outcome: a never-ending cycle of wars, with powerful empires conquering their weaker neighbors and eventually fighting each other for supremacy. this is already beginning to happen all around us. Wars of conquest, which were taboo since 1945, are coming back. Russia already sustained 1 million casualties in its attempt to conquer Ukraine and re-establish the Russian Empire. The Trump administration has already expressed imperial ambitions regarding Greenland, Panama, and even Canada, and seems to support Israel's conquest of Gaza. China, too, has its eyes on overseas expansion. The collapse of the old order is frightening, but it is also, of course, an opportunity to shape a better order. And the big question is, who will be the shapers? In the old liberal order, the ideal was that all humans would be shapers. It didn't matter whether you came from the USA or Brazil, whether you're white or black, a man or a woman, straight or gay, you had equal human dignity, and therefore, in theory at least, your views and interests counted for something. Sure, this liberal ideal was never fully realized. Ideals are not reality. But the liberal world was nevertheless a huge improvement over previous historical models. In the new post-liberal chaotic world, the ideal of equal human dignity is completely and openly abandoned. Instead of all humans trying to cooperate to shape a world that will be good for all humans, the current mantras are me first and might is right. A few powerful people in a handful of countries think that they have the right to shape the world for everyone. If you remember the meeting earlier this year between President Trump and President Zelensky at the White House, whenever Zelensky talked about things like justice or peace or territorial sovereignty of nations, President Trump interrupted him and said, "You don't have the cards. You don't have the cards." As we are meeting here in Sao Paulo to talk about the future of humanity, there are two questions for each of you to ponder. First, do you have any cards? Are there any cards in Sao Paulo? Or are all the cards in Washington, Beijing, and Moscow in the hands of people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin? The second question is perhaps even more important. Do you want to live in a world where the only thing that matters is cards? Is life ultimately just a card game with winners and losers? Now, I could have given the exact same speech that I gave now in 1939 or in 1914 or in countless other historical moments when humanity was on the brink of a major crisis. But this time, it's really different. Because as we ask ourselves, who will shape the new world of the 21st century, we need to take into account not only human shapers. For the first time in history, there are also non-human shapers on the planet, AIs. We might be quite close, maybe a few years, quite close to the moment when an algorithm would tell all humans, including Trump and Putin, you don't have the cards. As we enter the era of AI, I want to briefly explore here three questions. What is AI? What is the threat of AI? And how can all of you, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators, help humanity not just survive, but also flourish in the era of AI? So let's start. What is AI? There is so much hype around this term, AI, that the term is now inaccurately applied to almost every machine, and it is becoming difficult to know what it really means. So let me be very, very clear. AI does not mean automation. AI means agency. AI is not a tool in our hands. AI is an independent agent capable of acting and learning and changing on its own. To be an AI, it is not enough for a machine to act independently, automatically. It must also have the capacity to learn and change by itself, to make decisions by itself, and to invent new ideas by itself. As a simple example, consider a coffee machine. If you press a button and the machine automatically makes you an espresso according to a pre-programmed procedure, this is not AI. The machine doesn't learn or create anything new by itself. But suppose that as you approach the machine, even before you press any button, the machine says to you, I've been monitoring you for the last few weeks. Based on everything I've learned about you, and based on your facial expression right now, I predict that you would like to have a double espresso with 1 spoon of sugar. So I've already made you such a cup. Here, take it. That's an AI. It learned something by itself and decided something by itself. And it is really AI if the following day the machine announces, I've now invented a new drink that I call Bespresso, and I think you would like it even better than espresso. So here, try it out. I made you a cup. The confusion about AI results in part from the term itself. The term AI has been invented decades ago as an acronym for artificial intelligence. But it is inaccurate to think about AI as an artificial intelligence if by artificial we mean something that is entirely designed and controlled by humans. AI is not artificial in this sense. So it's better perhaps to think about AI as an acronym for alien intelligence. Alien not in the sense that it's coming from outer space, it doesn't. Alien in the sense that this is a non-human intelligence, it's not even an organic intelligence. It operates on completely different inorganic lines. It therefore is able to make decisions and to invent ideas that would never occur to human beings or to any other organic animal. A famous example of this was given already back in 2016 when the AI AlphaGo defeated the human Go champion Lee Sedol in Seoul. This game became justly famous, not just because AlphaGo defeated the human champion. It was the way AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol which shocked the world. Because AlphaGo, in order to win, invented new strategies for how to play the game that never occurred to any human player in thousands of years of the history of Go. Now, as long as AI invents new ways to play games or new kinds of coffee, it doesn't seem very important. But very soon, AI will invent new military strategies, new kinds of money, and even entire ideologies and religions. Consider money and finance more generally. If you recall the 2007-2008 financial crisis, you might remember that it was largely caused or started by something called CDOs, collateralized debt obligations. CDOs were financial devices invented by a handful of mathematicians and investment wizards. These financial devices were so complex that they were almost unintelligible to most humans, including politicians and regulators. And this led to an oversight failure and a global catastrophe. Now, what happens if we now allow or even encourage AIs to invent new financial devices that will be orders of magnitude more complex than CDOs and that will be utterly unintelligible to any human being? Such devices could greatly improve financial efficiency and contribute to economic growth, and they could become the bedrock of the global financial system. But what would happen to human politics when no voter or politician is able to understand and regulate finance anymore? And what happens if after a few years of unprecedented boom, the financial system suddenly busts and there isn't a single human being on earth that is able to make sense of what is happening? Now consider the implications for something like religion. Especially, let's take as an example, religions based on texts like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. For thousands of years, Judaism granted ultimate authority not to human beings, but to texts like the Bible and the Talmud. Flesh and blood rabbis nevertheless had immense power within Jewish society for the simple reason that their holy texts could never speak for themselves. They were mute. Whenever you had a question about the text, you needed a human interpreter. Rabbis are humans who know their way around many Jewish texts, from the Bible to the latest commentaries on the Talmud. This is the source of their authority. Now, over the centuries, so many Jewish texts have been composed that not even the most learned rabbi is able to read all these texts in his or her lifetime, let alone remember everything written there. But of course, this is something that an AI can easily accomplish. AI could quickly read all the Jewish texts ever composed, remember every word in every single one of these texts, and also find patterns in the texts that have so far escaped human notice, human attention, and AI could therefore use its unprecedented scriptural understanding and knowledge to produce completely new interpretations of the Holy Word. And this, of course, is true of Christianity and Islam as well. In effect, AI can start functioning as a holy text that talks back to the faithful without any need of a human mediation. What happens to a religion of texts when the texts start talking? Now, since Judaism invests, as I said, authority in the texts, a flesh and blood rabbi cannot just ignore the scriptural arguments of an AI. And human rabbis will very soon find it very difficult to compete with AI's mastery of the Jewish canon. Even if AI is not granted formal rabbinical status, it is likely that at least some humans, including even some rabbis, would turn to an AI rabbi for scriptural guidance and inspiration. The result might be surprising new developments in very old religions or the emergence of entirely new religions. Now, these kinds of developments have enormous positive potential. They can help humanity in countless ways, from inventing new medicines to preventing catastrophic climate change. But of course, AI also poses many threats. So let's move on to the second question of what is the threat of AI. The basic problem with AI is not that it is evil. The problem is that it is alien and therefore unpredictable and untrustworthy. At the heart of the AI race, there is a paradox of trust. Humans find it difficult to trust one another, especially as the world is becoming a collection of hostile fortresses. But the people who develop AI somehow manage to believe that we could trust the AIs. When I meet the people who lead the AI revolution, I normally ask them two questions. First, I ask them, why are you moving so fast when there are such huge risks? And the response almost everybody gives is the same. They say, we agree. We know that there are big dangers, and it would be best to proceed with more care. However, if we slow down while our competitors in the other company or in the other countries won't slow down, they will win the AI race, and the world will be dominated by the most ruthless people. We cannot trust our human competitors, so we must move as fast as possible. Then I ask the second question. Do you think you could trust the super intelligent AIs that you're developing? And the same people who just told me they can't trust the human competitors suddenly assure me that they could trust the super intelligent AIs. And this is such a paradox, because we have thousands of years of experience with human beings. We have a broad understanding of human psychology and biology, of the human craving for power, of the tricks humans use to gain power, and also of the forces that keep the human pursuit of power in check. We have also made considerable progress in finding ways to build trust between humans. 100,000 years ago, people lived in tiny bands of just a few dozen individuals and couldn't trust anybody outside their band. Today, there are nations like Brazil with hundreds of millions of citizens, and there are even bigger networks of cooperation linking all 8 billion humans on the planet. Complete strangers often grow the food we eat and invent and develop the medicines that keep us healthy. Of course, we are far from completely solving the problem of human trust, and there are still many tensions and conflicts and wars in the world, but with humans, at least we understand the challenge we are facing. In contrast, we have almost no experience with super intelligent AIs. We have just created the very first prototypes. We already know that even primitive AIs can lie, manipulate, and adopt goals and strategies that were not foreseen by their human developers. We have no idea what will happen when millions of super intelligent AIs interact with millions of humans, and it is even more difficult to predict what will happen when millions of super intelligent AIs interact with one another, creating AI societies, AI tribes. What kind of goals will they develop? What kind of tricks might they invent? True, at present, it is humans who develop the AIs, so we can try to design them in a way that will make them safe for humanity. But remember that a machine is an AI only if it is capable of learning and changing by itself, making decisions by itself, and inventing new ideas by itself. So no matter how human designs them originally, the AIs can then change in a radical and unpredictable manner. And it's a huge gamble to simply trust that these super intelligent alien intelligences will always remain our obedient servants. The humans who despair of trusting other humans, yet think they can trust these alien intelligences, may be making a very, very big mistake. Now, I know that it's sometimes hard for people to understand how AIs might escape human control. Due to the influence of science fiction, when we talk about AIs escaping our control, people tend to imagine a scenario of killer robots running in the streets, shooting people. While something like this is actually already happening in some places like Ukraine and like Gaza, this is nevertheless the wrong image. If you want to understand how AIs can escape our control, don't think about killer robots. Think about business corporations. What are corporations? Corporations like Microsoft or SpaceX or Petrobras are non-human agents. Though they don't have a body or a mind, these corporations can open bank accounts, can hire people, fire people, lobby politicians, and do many, many other things. Now, previously, this corporate agency was just a legal fiction, a fantasy of lawyers. Why? Because in practice, every decision made by Microsoft or Petrobras was actually made by some human being, not by the corporation. Every decision was made by some human executive, human shareholder, human engineer. But with AI, corporate decisions will increasingly be made by a non-human intelligence, a non-human agent. Imagine a corporation that has no human executives and no human shareholders, only AI executives and shareholders. This corporation can make billions and reshape the world. A practical question already today in 2025 is, do we want as a society to allow such things? This is a practical question. Do we as a society allow AIs to open bank accounts, to manage corporations, to trade and invest, to hire people, to lobby politicians? So let us move to the last question. How can humanity flourish in the era of AI? To survive and flourish, we need to remember two lessons from history. First, power isn't happiness. We humans have been extremely good in acquiring power, but so far we have not been very successful in translating power into happiness. That's why today we are thousands of times more powerful than in the Stone Age, but humans are not thousands of times more happy. That's also why the most powerful people in the world, like Trump and Musk and Xi and Putin, are definitely not the happiest people in the world. Secondly, to survive and flourish, we should remember also that intelligence isn't wisdom. Humans are the most intelligent animals on the planet, and at the same time, we are also the most deluded animals on the planet. No other animal can believe the kind of nonsense that humans can believe. For example, my home region of the Middle East is burning in a horrendous war, fueled in part by the most ridiculous fantasies you can imagine. Humans there, on all sides of the conflict, seriously believe that the creator of the universe commanded them to fight and kill other humans. And they also seriously believe that the creator of the universe will reward them for their violence with everlasting joy and bliss in heaven. No chimpanzee will ever believe such nonsense. but many highly intelligent humans believe it. So power isn't happiness, and intelligence isn't wisdom. AI will be more powerful and more intelligent than us. But the power of AI doesn't mean it will bring happiness, and the intelligence of AI doesn't mean that AI will be free from delusions. In fact, a super intelligence might very well be super deluded. Therefore, the big challenge for business leaders and innovators is not how to create more powerful and more intelligent technology. Rather, the challenge is how to develop the wisdom necessary to use all this power and intelligence for good purposes. How to do it? The answer is quite simple. Build more trust between humans before developing super intelligent AIs. Do you know why planet Earth is nevertheless ruled by humans and not by chimpanzees? Not because we are more intelligent than the chimpanzees. Humans rule the world because we know better than any other animal how to build trust with strangers and cooperate in very, very large numbers. We have developed this ability for thousands of years. Unfortunately, just when we need human trust more than ever before, many of our most powerful leaders are busy destroying this trust. Instead of strengthening connections between all humans, they are busy building walls between humans. If humanity is divided, AI will escape our control and will enslave or even annihilate us. On the other hand, if humanity cooperates, we can together develop AI and other technologies in a safe and responsible way. Think about AI as humanity's common child. When we educate children, we know that children learn from what we do, not from what we say. If you tell your child, don't lie, and then the child observes you lying, the child will also lie. Similarly, if you're a tech tycoon developing a super intelligent AI, and you're telling the AI, don't lie, and the AI then observes you lying, the AI will also lie. And if you tell the AI, be compassionate to people, but the AI observes you engaged in a ruthless pursuit of power, the AI will also grow up to pursue power ruthlessly without any compassion. This is why we must first solve the problem of human trust and only then develop super intelligent AI. If AI is developed in a cooperative way by compassionate and trustworthy humans, then the AI too is much more likely to grow up to be cooperative, compassionate, and trustworthy. And all of you have a role to play in that. You are leaders and innovators. Amidst the growing political chaos in the world, the business leaders and the tech innovators still have very considerable power to shape the world. So use your power to build trust between humans. Use your power to build a world which isn't just a card game between ruthless warlords. Build a world in which the dignity of everybody still counts. Thank you.
It's usually the people who know how to weave a story that give orders to the people who merely know the facts. Suppose we want to build an atom bomb. You need to know some facts. If you don't know that E equals mc squared, you will not be able to build an atom bomb. But to build an atom bomb, you need something else. You need millions and millions of people to cooperate. Not just the physicists, but also the miners and builders and the farmers that feed all the physicists and engineers and miners and so forth. If you just tell them the facts of physics, look, E equals mc squared, now get to it, nobody would do it. It's not inspiring. You always need to tell them some kind of fiction, and the people who invent the fictions are far more powerful than the people who know the facts of physics. The thing is that not in a dictatorship, in a democracy, newspapers and other news outlets are liable for their decisions. Like if the editor of the New York Times decides to publish some conspiracy theory or fake news at the front page of the New York Times, he cannot hide or she cannot hide behind the argument, but free speech. There are some people who believe it's true, so I put it on the front page of the New York Times. No, your job as editor is not just to put something random there or something that would please people. Your job is to fact check and to take responsibility for these decisions and to make sure that if you publish something on the front page of the New York Times, you better be sure that this is accurate and this is responsible. And if you don't know how to do it, then you're in the wrong job.